Hi everyone, hope you're having a good week. I'm going to do something a bit different this week. I want you to go make yourself a cup of coffee, get yourself a biscuit to dunk in it, sit back and relax, and I'm going to tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a man called Yaakov, and he lived in a faraway land. And one day he travelled to a new town, and he turned up. He was this mysterious stranger that nobody had ever seen before. And he presented himself in the town centre. He got off his horse or donkey or camel, it's unclear what he was riding in on, and he saw the three hard men of the town gathered by the town well. And he said to them, "Howdy." And they said, "Howdy, stranger. What brings you to these here parts?" And he says, "Well," ha 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 ha, the well. So they're standing around by the well, and they explain to him they're waiting for all the other hard men of town to come and help them roll this giant stone off the well, because that's blocking the well, and it always takes a whole group of them to do it together because it is so heavy. And he plays it cool. He doesn't say anything about the stone until he suddenly sees in the distance a swirl of dust is rising up, and he sees a flock of sheep approaching. And in front of the flock of sheep is the most beautiful girl he has ever seen before. And just then a tumbleweed goes by in the breeze, and her hair is blowing gently. She has a bit of hay in it because she's been busy with sheep all day, but he doesn't even notice because she's so beautiful. And as she approaches, he casually goes over to the well and just gently pushes the stone off the well effortlessly, as if it weighs nothing to him. He plays it so cool. And never mind his 14 years in yeshiva, he leans over and leans in for a kiss because he just can't help it. She's just breathtaking. And he says, "Hi, I'm Yaakov. Who are you?" And she says, "Hi, I'm Rachel. Would you like to come back to my place?" And he follows her home, and he introduces himself to her father, Lovon. Now, Lovon is a very evil, wicked man and very devious. Yaakov knows this already, so he's well prepared. He says to him, "I've just met your daughter by the well, and I'm going to be very specific so there's no confusion. I know you have two daughters. The one I met was called Rachel. She's your youngest daughter, and I'm fallen in love with her. I want to marry her. That one, Rachel." And Lovon says, "Sure, what a great idea. Why don't you work for me for 7 years, and then you can marry Rachel?" So Yaakov says, "Okay, great, let's do that." And the 7 years go by very quickly because he's so in love. It just seems like almost like a week to him. And the 7 years comes to it. And it's finally the big day. It's going to be their wedding day. Now, Rachel and Yaakov, they know that Lovon is a bit devious, and they think maybe he's going to pass off her older sister Leah to Yaakov instead. We haven't mentioned Leah yet. Leah is the older sister. She's not pretty. She's got this like funny weird thing going on with her eyes. They're always a bit puffy and red. She doesn't look great. She cries a lot. She's like quite a miserable personality. She's very worried that Yaakov's older wicked brother Esau is going to marry her, and she really doesn't want to marry him. That's why she's crying the whole time. And Rachel and Yaakov devise a plan so that Yaakov won't have to marry Leah, he can marry Rachel, because she's going to have a special sign so that he'll know it's Rachel. But when it comes to it, kind-hearted, sweet Rachel thinks, "I feel very bad for Leah. She's been so sad her whole life, and actually it would actually be really nice for her to marry a very special, nice man like Yaakov, and I know I love him so much, but maybe I'm going to be the bigger person and give her the signs, because otherwise she's going to be so heartbroken and so embarrassed." So she does a very kind thing, and she gives her sister the signs, and Yaakov, because Leah's wearing a veil, doesn't realise. And then they go to sleep that night, and it's the desert. It's very dark in the desert at night. So he doesn't even see her until the morning. And when he wakes up in the morning, he gets a giant shock. He says, "Oh, it's not Rachel, it's Leah. What have I done?" And he goes storming off and has a big argument with wicked Lovon, who's swindled him. He says, "What did you do? I said I wanted to marry Rachel, not Leah." And he said, oh, I know, but that's just traditional around here. We always marry the older daughter off first. Never mind, let's put it behind us. You can marry Rachel in a week's time and just carry on working for another 7 years for Rachel. So Yaakov says, okay, because he's very good natured, let's do that. And so that's what happens. A week later, he marries Rachel. But it's never quite the same. She has to share her husband with her sister and with her 2 maidservants. And let's be honest, nobody would like that. And so they don't live happily ever after. They actually all just argue quite a lot. And that is the end of the story. Now, why is it that the Torah presents it like this? So I've always had this guilty secret. I haven't really told people this before, but just recently I've come out and said it. I really, really like Rachel, and I don't really like Leah so much, even though she's one of the Imahos, and I know she's a Sadekes, and I know she was the mother to 6 of the Shavatim, so she must be a very special person. I just don't really connect with her. I really like Rachel, and I just don't really feel it with Leah. And I recently admitted this to somebody, and a few people. I've done a survey, and it's not just me. Everyone feels like that. Everyone loves Rachel. Nobody likes Leah. And I'm just whispering because I'm just worried she can hear me. But that's kind of how it's presented. You have the hero and heroine of the story, cool Yaakov and beautiful Rachel, and they fall in love. And then, they're victims to this horrible swindle from the wicked man Lovon. And Leah's quite complicit in it, and she's ugly. And that's how it's presented in the Torah. It's not just me, that's actually how it reads. And that's why I feel like that about it. So what is the Torah telling us by presenting the story in this way? It's very strange. I mean, it's like this whole love story. It's like a Grimm's tale gone wrong. I don't really understand what's going on. So I'm figuring there must be some kind of message here. I think none of us like Leah because secretly we're all a little bit Leah. I think, Leah, she spent her whole life worrying about something that may never happen. And in fact, it didn't happen. She didn't have to marry Esav in the end. She married Yaakov. And she married this big tzaddik, and she had these 6 wonderful children. But even then, she's so caught up in what other people think of her. She keeps saying, oh, but maybe he doesn't love me and I feel so hated. And all of her children's names, they all reflect that. She calls them things like, Hashem has seen my affliction and my husband hates me and Hashem saw that. And maybe now my husband will love me. But actually, it takes until her 6th child to finally become content and happy with her status and feeling like she's made it and that Yaakov loves her. It takes a very long time. And actually, after that, she's a very good mother and a very good wife. And she's the wife who carries on with him till their old age. And she's buried with him. And I think the message with Leah is just appreciate your life. Don't think what might happen or what do other people think about me. Maybe it's all going to be good. And it was good, but she was too wrapped up in herself to even realize that it was good until much, much later. So just look around you. Don't think worst case scenario. Think, look what I've got. It's great. It could even get better. What about Rachel? So Rachel, she starts off with a fairy tale story and then actually all goes horribly wrong. She's really miserable. She's having to share her husband with all these people. She's infertile. She can't have children. All the other wives are all having loads of children. She knows there's going to be 12 and 10 of them have already been born and she still hasn't had children. And she does have the final 2, Yosef and Binyamin. But even then she dies in childbirth. It's so awful. So what can we take from Rachel? So even at that moment, she's at her lowest point. She does such a nice thing. She doesn't think oh, my whole life that was a fairy tale is about to be ruined by my husband marrying my sister. She thinks, oh, let me just think about my sister. She's a good person. She hasn't done anything wrong. And actually, it would be really nice for her to marry Yaakov instead of Esav. So, let me do this thing for her. Don't let her be embarrassed. And then she might be happy. And, I'll see how it pans out. And, it didn't pan out that well for her. Like I said, it was quite difficult for her. But I think the amazing thing is with this situation, none of us would be happy in this situation. I think we're all waiting, as you read the story, there's this frustration. You're waiting for it to resolve itself. You want this frozen happy ending where the 2 sisters get back together and they really love each other. And actually, I think the Torah is saying life is not a fairy tale. The person who looks like she has a fairy tale beginning, you don't know what's going to happen for her. It might all go wrong. And the person who seems really miserable, she might have a really nice life. So don't get so caught up in what will or won't happen. Just get on with the life you have. And that's exactly what they do. You can't choose your family, the Torah is saying. They were kind of put into this situation. It's a really difficult situation. It's like a very difficult family dynamics. It's not surprising that there's lots of conflict. And that's okay. You can't choose your family. You don't necessarily have to like your family or your friends or your colleagues or whoever it is in your life that's causing all this angst. But what you do have to do is get on with it. And you see that, between the four wives and Yaakov, they kind of saw their way through this messy situation and they managed to produce these 12 wonderful Shavatim, and they didn't let all the weird family dynamics and all the arguments get in the way. You don't always get on with everyone, and that's okay. The Torah is saying, don't beat yourself up about it. Just stay focused, keep your goal in mind, and do what you're there to do. All the arguments were all about, they all had the right intentions. Rachel was upset about being infertile, not because she needed to have a baby. She needed to have one of the Shvatim. She wanted to play her part in history. She wants to be the mother of the Bnei Israel. And that's exactly what Leah wanted as well. And so they got on with it. They did it. They had this family, this hodgepodge, and they made do. And that's what produced us today. That's why we're here today. So message number 1 from Leah: appreciate what you have when you have it. Don't think what might go wrong. Message number 2 from Rachel is, think outside of yourself. Even when things are hard for you, think about what can you do for somebody else. Maybe somebody else is having a hard time. Maybe you can help them. And I think that, combined with Yaakov Shweki, is why we really like Rachel, because he made her whole story into a song. If you don't know it, Mama Rachel, look it up on YouTube. Fabulous song, makes you cry every time, and that's why we relate to her as well, I think. And thirdly, the Torah's final message is just get on with it. You can't control the situation you're born into. You just have to react. The only thing you can do is control your reaction. So react well. Get on with it. Have a very good week. Hope you enjoyed your coffee. Take care.